Welcome to Fantastic Contraption, a physics sandbox game where you can build just about anything, using some simple pieces, your imagination, and the basic laws of two-dimensional physics. Back in the prime days of Flash, there were millions of players, all taking a stab at beating the free levels that were included within the game, each showing off their creative problem-solving techniques. Players' creativity didn't stop just there. Players could make their own levels too, flooding the game with hundreds and thousands of unique challenges. One of these levels, originally created for a competition, would not see a solve until a whole 14 years later. And the solve would not just come from one player, but in fact take the efforts of the game's best minds all coming together in collaboration. This is the story of Hurricane Irene, one of Fantastic Contraption's hardest levels ever created. And this is the story of how we solved it. Unfortunately, the original Brown Crown 3 forum post has been lost to time with the shutdown of the old forums, and the Wayback Machine only gets us so far. This was Hurricane Irene's first appearance, originally showing up as a what could have been level for the competition. A bunch of well-known, good, strong players at the time took a bit of interest initially, but ultimately, mostly they just joked about how hard it would be. No one produced any sort of ideas or attempts at even starting the level, or at least they didn't share anything with us. What was it that made Hurricane Irene such a difficult level? Well, most hard levels fall into two different categories. In Category 1, you have a level that is hard to conceptualize or even visualize what a solve could even look like. This usually means players have to think long and hard about creating a mechanism that can fit a specific role to solve one specific task. In Category 2, you have levels that require multiple tasks to be completed in rapid succession. These levels aren't always hard to achieve each individual segment or require any revolutionary head-scratching mechanisms, but instead require many smaller, easier tasks to be completed. Levels that fit into Category 2 often challenge players to be more thoughtful and resourceful and efficient with their pieces, and it forces them to come up with not just any way to complete a task, but often to find the most efficient way to solve a task. Otherwise, they risk running out of pieces for their next task. Okay, so there's plenty of Category 2 levels out there. So what makes Irene so different? Well, remember when I said that there are multiple simple tasks to complete? Yeah, Irene's tasks are not so simple. Taking a quick breakdown of the level, Hurricane Irene can be broken down into 5 core components. If you're unfamiliar to Fantastic Contraption, bear with me here, it'll make sense in a moment. For part 1, we need to follow this curly path underneath us to knock the ball off its perch and roll down into this tube. Part 2, we need the ball to be transported upwards to the opening of this little U-turn section, which we will call Part 3, where the ball needs to travel away from the build area, up a little bit, turn around, come back, be thrown over this gap, this ball, and if the throw is good enough, this little dugout section as well. Which brings us to Part 4, where the ball needs to be thrown very precisely upwards at an angle to escape this little tube, only to fall down this longer tube to get to Part 5, where we need to catch the ball from the bottom of this tube and then somehow transport the ball back up and over this yellow ghost rod, and then carefully roll its way into the goal. Each of these parts could easily be done in 40 to 50 pieces each, no doubt. But the real kicker here is that we only have 119 to use for the entire level before we run dry. So how on earth do we do it? That would mean we need to average around 23 to 24 pieces per section in order to have enough pieces left to solve the whole level. ID36, a well-known, strong player, and a brilliant mind for coming up with ways to complete tasks in a piece-efficient manner, was able to solve a toned-down version of the level, Hurricane Ike, which shares some similarities to Irene, all while being no small challenge in itself. After this solve, a few players almost assumed that ID would tackle Irene next. But as the years went on and nothing was posted, the dream of seeing a solve for Irene slowly disappeared into the void. Sometimes others' disbelief can be a motivating factor. Sometimes the opposite. In this case, seeing some of the game's best minds stumped on where to even start, no one came up with any good ideas. A whole 11 years after the level's release, no one had shown any desire to even attempt the level. Until, on June 11th, Empika was trawling back through unsolved levels and stumbled upon Irene, which piqued his interest. Now this may not look like much, but it's often these diagrams which can catch the interest of other players. And it was exactly that image that we got our first piece of progress. Noja was the first to build anything and actually publish it for us to see, chiming in, building something to get an idea for part 1. And this was a historic moment, as prior to this no one had ever posted an idea for this level. Now maybe this doesn't look like much yet, but Noja was experimenting with mechanisms, trying to get something to rotate with enough force to throw down underneath the stage. Then Brainet joined the party, showcasing an idea for a part 3 throw, which indicated that a single arm and a well-timed throw may be possible to use for a whole section of this level. After 11 years, the level was finally seeing some players attempting and theorising some solutions. With a bit of back and forth between Noja, Brainet and Empika, the players were starting to show some good progress, until the last bit of progress for Hurricane Irene was posted on June 23rd of 2023, and then silence. It's 2025 and tier lists are all the rage. Schmidt posts a tier list of his unsolved Brown Crown levels, and Hurricane Irene is not included. Is this a subtle hint that Schmidt thinks this is not possible? Probably, but he makes another one after Empika points out that it's missing. Hurricane Irene shows up as one of the lower tiers under the doable category. There was a little discussion on solving these remaining levels. And in fact, one of them was solved through a collaborative effort. Maybe I'll have to make another video on that one another time. With that tier list out of the way, one player in particular had an idea. This is Cloverdrop. Cloverdrop is one of the few players who is full of surprises. Seeing some of her creativity and unique style of pushing the game's mechanics in different ways is truly incredible. Some of the ideas and designs that come from her are just experimenting and having fun, trying out new concepts and ideas. Clover's recent rising in the last few years, as shown in some of her designs, display her skillful thinking and resourcefulness, particularly in coming up with simple, low-piece solutions to problems, such as seen in this 22-piece design to solve core Mac, a level from a competition, which is no easy level, requiring precision, timing, powerful pulse, and a whole lot of persistence. If anyone could come up with some creative ideas on how to get started, Clover was that person. The initial design Clover posted doesn't really look like that much to the untrained eye, but if we look closely, we can see the behaviour of this mechanism is the focal point here. The aim is to have a mechanism that from a standstill can rotate around and throw something to the right using the same weight and continuous motion. Clover spent the next few of her designs tweaking and coming up with ideas on how this could work, all the while wondering if she was actually on the right track or not, and mentioning a few times that she really didn't have much interest in this level. But what if? For someone who didn't have much interest in the level, Clover simply couldn't put down the thought that she was onto something, whether she knew it or not. While Clover was busy building, rlbabits appeared, wrote an absolute monster of an essay about going from the right hand side to get the ball would be so much easier, more piece and space efficient, probably better for weight reuse. Clover proceeded to ignore Babbits and came up with this in 32 pieces, which would turn out in our favour for now. Sorry Babbits. As Clover left off after hours and hours of building and tweaking, just trying to get a single touch on the ball, Ken75 jumped in and using his magical fairy hands adjusted the design to hit the ball off and onto the ramp. The very next day, the ball was out. Part 1 was complete and in style too. The genius of this design wasn't just in the intricacy and compactness of it all, but how it was so tidy and all the way in the bottom left corner, leaving huge amounts of room for building all the other parts. Babbits was still here, but this time he came up with some helpful ideas for part 2 and 3 of the design. People were getting excited to see progress on this level after so many years. Even with Schmidt, the level creator, coming to the party expressing just how cool it was that after 11 years this level was finally seeing some progression on it. This is about the time that I showed up too, and I drew some things while at work, don't tell anybody, for the final stage of the level. What did they mean? No one really knew. Besides, we were only just getting the ball rolling, literally. We had a long ways to go yet. Welcome to Brown Academy, a new fun competition for players of all skill levels invited to come along and join in, learning some new things from each other. This competition was designed and run by the wonderful competition master, Comey. As the rounds progressed, activity around the server picked up among the players, all getting involved in both solving and helping others solve the levels for each round. The competition was a nice little break from attempting to solve Irene, and so the activity among solving it died right down. Until round 5. Round 5 showed a lot of visual similarity and even a curious name to Hurricane Irene. The level was no joke and only actually had a few players managing to solve it. You see, this level shares a lot of similarities to Hurricane Irene. One obvious one being what could be named as part 2 of the level, raising the ball from the lower part to this gateway at the top of the stage. I ended up solving the level in 80 pieces, with plenty to spare, and it gave me some ideas. My part 2 for Light Breeze was good, but it could be better. I spent a bit of time developing something that could not only work as a part 2, but also fall off the edge of the stage and be reused as the weight for something else. In Fantastic Contraption, we call this technique weight reusal, and it is incredibly powerful if you can get it to work, as it can save a huge amount of pieces. The main downside to weight reusal is that you are taking two individual mechanisms and linking them together, which now makes them dependent on each other. Any modifications to one of these mechanisms now directly impacts the other, so now we have to tweak both designs at once, treating them as a single entity. This can make tweaking incredibly difficult and often frustrating, but it has the advantage of requiring significantly less pieces. With that, I posted my idea for part 2 to the collaborations chat, and once again, Irene progress picked up. Cloverdrop and I spent some time refining my part 2 that I used in the level Light Breeze to be more usable, until we came up with this design, which just uses 26 pieces to lift the ball up. We now had to develop something for part 3. The ideas of part 3 go all the way back to an idea from Brainet. He discovered that it would be possible to throw the ball from a resting point underneath the ghost rod, and have it make its way over the entire top of the level, with the right pole angle of course. rlbabits also had a proof of concept that this could work, but instead skewering the ball with friction and slingshotting it out at the right angle. Marcxb had a plan to utilise a certain mechanism that could shift its pivot under its own weight, a nifty little trick which unfortunately didn't ever see a working design, for this part at least. Part 3 ended up being really tricky. The problem is that once an arm is resting here, we can't simply just hammer down on this edge and attempt to throw the ball, or our arm will actually hit the roof here. We also need to pull the arm back into the centre as we pult, which is kinda tricky to do. This is where the one who started this all those years ago rejoined the army of builders. This is Empika. Empika has shown their skills over the years with hundreds and hundreds of solves, greatly improving over the years and showing a bunch of Fantastic Contraption oldies just how it's done. Although they never won, Empika put up a formidable competition in some of Schmidt's Brown Crown competitions, being only knocked out on the last round in round 10, with some seriously impressive solves. Empika is also really fast at this game. Like, I'm not even mad that I got trounced in a speed solving competition by them. It's one thing to have a keen eye for design and to creatively come up with solutions, but to come up with them at such speed is also pretty impressive. Empika stepped in and gave some really valuable adjustments to the design, allowing the pult arm to be pushed in just that little bit further into the U-turn section, for us to focus on the pult. This was just the push we needed to get us to the next stage of attempting to throw the ball. We had everything in its place, and now we just needed to work on our throw. Part 3 ultimately had a lot of people's input on the design, and hundreds of tweaks and iterations, but nobody was able to get the right angle to launch the ball over everything in one throw. This was pretty difficult. Part 3 was so close, we could feel it, but ultimately it just wasn't working. It was a 1 in a million tweak, and we don't know anyone who's ever gotten a 1 in a million tweak before, right? This is Marcxb. Marc is no stranger to tweaking designs that require an insane level of precision. As you may know from him tweaking the Awash 2-piece designs, where Marc was instrumental in both of these designs. Marc has also built plenty of other creative designs for other levels, often including his signature move, the Parallel Extender. Marc is a serious contraptioneer with an amazing ability to investigate simple physics concepts but into great detail, often coming out with some seriously impressive designs. We needed some fresh ideas from an ideas man, and Marc was just that guy. Marc locked in and got serious, not only tweaking the design to perfection, but also reducing the amount of pieces we were using for part 3, and instead of simply throwing it over, he opted to go for additional style points by doing this. By slamming the ball into the corner of this static block, Marc was able to rebound the ball over the top and with a really good topspin, giving us an amazing setup for part 4. In fact, there was so much momentum and topspin that we even considered trying to place a ramp up there for a part 4 and just have the ball roll over. But we'll work out part 4 a bit later. Part 3 was complete. In a slightly different way than we expected, but complete nevertheless. With Marc on our team, part 3 completed, the approval of Babits, and 45 pieces remaining, things were looking great. We were on a roll, with plenty of people involved now and invested into seeing this level get solved. It was on to part 4. Part 4 looks a lot easier than it actually is, and this very fact stumped a lot of people. Everyone could see that the idea of placing a simple rod and stick in this location and pulling down on the right hand side at the right time could easily achieve what we needed for part 4. Brainet and Empika both had some ideas from years ago about how we might achieve this, assuming it to be pretty straightforward. But this is not as easy as it looks. Everything about Fantastic Contraption designs is about getting sticks and rods to rotate and move in a certain way, and getting a single rod to get to this position is remarkably harder than it looks. Many players speculated that this could be done in a few pieces, but were surprised by how difficult this innocent looking task actually turned out to be. Some players were able to achieve this motion, but we have a second problem. We are seriously low on pieces, and this part 4 takes a lot of force and a lot of pieces to place into position, and then needs another weight to fall and pull the ball up. I think we were all secretly hoping that someone else would come up with something better, but nobody came forward with anything that could work in a small amount of pieces. This part is embarrassingly difficult because it looks so damn simple, and yet it was posing such a complex task. We would likely need something under 20 pieces in total in order to have enough pieces left for part 5, and that was looking pretty difficult. Until... Now I gotta toot my own horn here, this is actually beautiful. In a smooth, mechanical fashion, the rod was in place in just 17 pieces. And if we count out the fact that this weight could be a reusal from elsewhere, the mechanism involved is actually only 12 pieces. Once this is in place, we just need to attach a weight to it and pull down on this side at the right time, and we can easily throw the ball over, sending us over to part 5. Surely this is one of the best options here. Next we moved on to look at part 5. Now I had originally posted this drawing of what I had envisioned a part 5 looking like, with the idea that this arm could catch the ball and then the whole mechanism would raise up slowly, dropping the ball onto the ramp of part 1, securing a victory in a nice piecewise manner. That's when I had the idea to combine the dropping of part 5 into the weight of part 4, establishing the setup for parts 4 and 5 together, leaving only weight drops and timing to be done. This caught the eye of a few players thinking this was a pretty damn good idea, especially as the part 5 should be pretty consistent, and only the part 4 will be hard to tweak, right? And to top it off, I had initially envisioned that a weight for the Part 4 Pult and a separate weight for the Part 5 lift would be required. But as it turned out, we could actually use the one weight for the lot of it. The mechanism worked in our favour here, so much so that pulling down on this part of the Part 4 rod caused the mechanism to work in reverse, thus lifting up the section for Part 5. Everything was falling into place, and the end of this level was in sight. We just had to get the right tweak for these mechanisms, and we were on our way to victory. Or so we thought. The fact that these parts were now completely inbuilt into each other meant they had huge interaction, thus making the chances more like 1 in a million. We'd already used our Marcxb 1 in a million tweak with Part 3. We were so close, and it drove us mad. And we desperately needed more help. New ideas. Enter Djbreslin. DJ has played the game for as long as I can remember, showing off his skills in many ways, not only in brown designs for hard levels, but building cleverly thought out mechanisms, bridges, and showing off incredible attention to detail in some of his creations. Recently, DJ has made a return to the game, showing that even though he's been away from the game for a while, he hasn't lost any of his skills, coming up with some impressive solves for levels and fast, with some of these solves being posted to levels mere hours after the levels published. DJ showed up and immediately got to work, started shaving pieces off our ideas left, right and centre, allowing us to have just that little bit more wiggle room in everything we designed. It was DJ's idea to simplify the basket in our Part 2, giving us that extra piece. One piece being saved doesn't seem like much, but trust me, in this level, we're going to need as many pieces as possible. DJ would turn out to be the driving force in attempting to turn our ideas into a reality, spending hours and hours tweaking the final parts of this design, desperately hoping for a solved. A lot of us had ideas, shared them, and DJ would build them and test them. This was such a valuable resource that can't be understated. DJ and Empika were the main ones tweaking the design now. We were working overtime, trying multiple combinations, adjusting multiple parts again and again. We were getting this solved. With every Discord notification sound, we all rushed to check to see if the post we had all been waiting for was posted. All that stood in our way was this final ramp down to the goal. But we had one tiny problem. We were out of pieces. Tweak after tweak, after soul-crushing tweak, DJ relentlessly made adjustments to the design. But to no avail. The end was so close, but we just didn't have the grunt. Out of pieces, out of ideas. We had failed. Maybe this level truly was impossible. Maybe no one could actually achieve this. Maybe. Just maybe, Babits was right all along. The past few weeks of our lives felt dedicated to this level. I just felt so strongly that we could do it. But even with everyone's help and brilliant expertise, we just couldn't muster it. With hundreds and hundreds of designs that almost made it, the end of the level was just in sight, but just out of reach. We'd spent hours tweaking to get the ball to bounce and roll, altering the design again and again, hoping that it might work. But what if this roll wasn't even enough? As it turns out, it actually wasn't. I built this in a test environment, and even with the best case scenario of the ball rolling out, having a pixel perfect bounce, it just wasn't going to cut it. In actuality, I had single-handedly done one of the worst things for this level's progress. I had given players a false hope, in something that was never even going to work. When you're so close to a solve, or you have such a strong belief that an idea could work, it's easy to get tunnel visioned onto it, because you can see the possibility of it working. But sometimes the best step forward is also the hardest one. And I think we were all thinking it. We had to shelve this current design. We needed to rebuild some things from scratch. We needed some new ideas. The Discord slowly went quiet, as everyone needed a break, and I totally understood. But I just could not shake the fact that I felt like I had led everyone astray with my part 4 and 5, which maybe just weren't as good as I thought they were. Over the next few days, I knew someone would have to make the hard call. And on the 17th of October 2025, we made that call. Collab assemble! Taking responsibility for the grief I had caused everyone, I made the executive decision to delete everything that I had built for part 4 and 5, and start over from part 3. And I also plan to link part 2 and 3 and 5 together with a triple weight reusal. So we should also rebuild part 3. Oh, and also since part 3 is linked to part 2, we need to rebuild part 2 as well. Should be easy enough. I think we were all secretly hoping that we wouldn't have to rebuild anything, and that our tweaks would just work, but it was driving everyone mad. Taking a look back at part 2 and 3, the mechanism actually falls off the stage, meaning there is weight reusal potential here. As it turns out, it absolutely sucked tweaking this. Sitting here adjusting random pieces, pressing play, occasionally contemplating life choices, but finally, it was done. We made it. The ball was over. Part 3 was working once again, chained to the part 5. And part 5 had a huge amount of power now. And better yet, part 4 could now be made entirely independent, meaning that any adjustments to it would only affect the final lift. Surely, this was our ticket out of here. Part 4 now needed to be built from scratch. Now we had some ideas and all started building our own things, taking ideas from past workings. But that's when Mark had other ideas. Remember this cool thing Mark showed off before of the self-lifting mechanism? Well, as it turns out, this mechanism has the perfect rotation and lifting movements for placing the part 4 stick in place. With some interesting weight drop trickery, we can utilise the weight initially to position the rod into place. Then we can reuse that same weight a second time, after some delay, to blast the ball up, over the wall and down to the bucket on part 5. Mark, you're an absolute genius. IGLima had been busy as quality control, proving that each stage of our newly found mechanisms could work, if tweaked correctly. This was a super important role, as we now know well in advance if a piece was going to work or not. With all of the pieces in place, we were finally in the endgame, for real this time. It would just come down to a good tweak, and then What once stood untouched, unsolved, deemed impossible for 14 years, had finally met its match in the form of an incredible community's dedication and collaborative efforts. The feeling was amazing, to finally see all these pieces coming together in one big unison. After watching the design almost solve thousands of times, seeing all the individual components working together as one almost brings a tear to the eye. It's hard to describe the feelings of watching this level solved, knowing that it has taken the works of so many brilliant minds, all working together to accomplish something that, at the end of the day, is just a bunch of sticks and rods placed in the right places. But perhaps that's just the beauty of it. The fantastic contraption community rolls out the high as the day comes to an end. No more tweaks required, no more time needed to spend. No more frantically checking every Discord notification just to see if there was a soul. Just the sound of a cool, gentle breeze in the stillness of the night after the storm has passed. With such an achievement, such a feat of masterful engineering and collaboration, one has to stop and think, what else could be possible? Thanks for watching.